And now we're joined by our analyst, Robert Rosenthal from IlliniBoard.com. Robert, maybe just some of your initial takeaways from this first game.
That is certainly one way to start a season. Not only to obviously win and beat a Big Ten West opponent, but to also look like the competent team while your opponent is getting the bad penalty that keeps the drive going. Your opponent is getting the safety on the punt. So many times the last 20 years, name a coach, name a program, there's been so many instances where Illinois is the one making the fatal mistake that loses the game. They rough the punter, they do this. It could have been a game if it was only that. When you have a game when Nebraska's doing that and you're playing the smart football, that opens the mind to, okay, how far can this team go? So you couldn't really have a better start.
And when Brandon Peters went down in that first quarter, I don't think many people might have expected Art Sitkowski to perform the way that he did. What did you make of his Illini debut?
It's interesting. I sometimes, since I'm on the fan side of things, sometimes I will hear from fans of other teams. And so when Sitkowski transferred to Illinois, I got an unsolicited email from a Rutgers blogger who said, hey, I just want to tell you, he was way better than many people remember last year, and just keep an eye on him because, as a freshman, he was a true freshman. He threw 18 interceptions. Everybody gave up on him. It's over. He's a bust, whatever. But he's like, when he had to come in for 2 games last year, he was really good. I don't think the Rutgers coaching staff made the best job naming the Nebraska transfer the starter. And so I got the information that keep an eye on this guy, and at least yesterday it looked like that. Obviously, he threw the 1 interception that got taken away, and that's going to be the concern. That's going to be the label that he carries with him. But, 12 for 15 after that, leading all these touchdown drives, the bomb-to-deuce span, that it's, you can't really ask for much more from a backup quarterback.
Sure, and we don't know the status of Brandon Peters right now, but if Art has to step in for a significant amount of time, do you think they should have some confidence in him, and do you think he can sustain this kind of success?
I would think so. So if you think about it, he's a 4th-year player. He was a 4-star recruit. He had offers from Michigan and other big schools. He picked home state Rutgers. He stayed home. They gave him the job as a true freshman, and he fell flat on his face throwing 18 interceptions. But sometimes a guy like that, you get smacked in the face, you regroup, and your 4th year, you're still that 4-star talent. You still have the arm. You find the right staff, you find the right offense, and you can blossom. So, what we saw in this game suggested that he's capable of that.
Now, a lot of people had questions on what the defense was going to look like. Is it what you expected, and what can you take away from that first kind of look that we'd seen?
So in the spring game, that's the only chance anybody, including the Nebraska coaches, had to see what the scheme would be. They stayed in a very kind of basic, switch it up to a 3-4 defense, take the 2 outside linebackers all the way up on the line like you have 5 linemen, and that's what they showed most of the whole spring game. Then they didn't really use that look at all, maybe short yardage yesterday, but that's it. They had a completely different look. The coaches probably had a smile on their face of like, well, they didn't see this coming. Now let's throw this dime at them. Let's throw this nickel at them, see what they think. So it was a very interesting scheme. They used sometimes 4 safeties on the field at the same time. They did 6 defensive backs out there, 2 of them corners and 4 of them safeties. So it's really interesting. It'll have the UTSA coaches scrambling to say, oh, I think they do this. Well, we were preparing for this. So, that's the whole point behind why Bret Bielema wanted to have this camp be a big secret. He said, you get 1 chance to do it. You get 1 chance to surprise an opponent, and it was Nebraska, and they won.
Do you think it's an improved defense from what we saw last season and maybe, the last 4 years, let's say?
You would think so. Obviously, now that the tape's out there, teams will know how to attack it, and they'll try different things, and so the chess match begins, so we won't really be able to say. But from the defense we saw in the Penn State game, which was the last game, until, this Nebraska game, it's night and day. It was significantly better. Last year against Nebraska, they still gave up yards at Nebraska, but they grabbed 5 turnovers, and that was the difference in the game. This was more, when Illinois made that run late second quarter into the third quarter and pushed out to the 21-point lead, the defense was playing as well as the offense. They were forcing 3 and outs. It was really impressive. 5 sacks, no one expected that. So it's an impressive debut for Ryan Walters.
Sure. And I don't know if we'll even know until maybe next Saturday or, as the season continues. But do you think they were able to be successful on defense because they had that element of secrecy? Or can we say, hey, you know what, this is a much improved Illinois defense?
I mean, you saw the pieces that make it work in this game. You saw Rod Perry, right over the center, making a mess of things in the middle, tripping up tailbacks in the backfield. He had a really impressive game. You saw Jake Hansen being Jake Hansen. You saw Calvin Hart have a breakout game. Hopefully the injury there isn't bad because he was the best player on the field probably up until he got injured. So, it was really kind of impressive how they took the roster pieces from last year, moved everything around, and tried something different, and it was really impressive how it worked.
Yeah, Calvin Hart, his Illini debut was surely something special. I mean, he had a little bit of lovey ball. I don't necessarily want to call it that in a sense, but I think, lovey ball was still alive and well with this Illinois team, even though, Calvin Hart Jr. didn't play for Lovey. But what did you make of his Illini debut? And if Calvin Hart Jr. is not able to play for a significant amount of time, what does the depth look like at that linebacker position?
Well, Tariq Barnes came in. He looked pretty good. He had an injury last year and was kind of didn't participate in the spring, so there were questions of whether he was back to 100% healthy. He looked good replacing Hart. He kind of had that breakout game against Wisconsin last year, so you would hope that he could fill in well there. And then there's Kalen Tolson, who's also been dealing with an injury. He's been very limited this fall camp. And so you're not sure if he's 100%, but you do have depth there. So if they're just using the two linebackers in the middle and then the outside linebackers are filled by the defensive linemen, they do have depth with Tolson and Barnes to fill in if it's a bad injury for Hart.
Sure, and there were a lot of surprises in this one. Maybe we'll start with Deuce Spann because I don't think anybody would have had money that he was going to come in and play wide receiver. That wasn't mentioned to us in any of the pre-game press conferences leading up to this game. Why do you think they kept that such a secret?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when teams are scouting another team, you will know a package for one player. And so, they'll have people watching film of a game. Now coaches know, hey, if that number 6 comes in and is split out wide in a single coverage on this side, they're probably going to throw this bomb again. So you keep that in your pocket and you use it once, and then people will be watching for it. And then Deuce would have to run other routes and have other things in the package for him. It happened in the past with quarterbacks that would come in for one play. They're running it. You can surprise people once, and then you have to learn. But I mean, he's a really fast guy. We saw that in the spring game when he was at quarterback, and he's tall and athletic and great throw, great catch. Perfect timing that. They had just taken a 14-point lead. They get the ball back and take a strike at the end zone. It was strike while the opponent is a bit wounded, and it worked.
And there were so many position changes that happened during the offseason. Isaiah Williams